Manchurian generation ballot flood. More than 1 million Chinese with U.S. citizenship could vote in 2030 elections. What in the fucking hell is that? Look at this. Don't you just want that flooding into your Western country so that they can vote? More than 1 million Chinese with U.S. citizenship who grew up in communist China will soon start voting in American elections. Number one, New York Times best-selling investigative journalist and Breitbart News senior contributor Peter Schweizer reveals in his new book, The Invisible Coup, how American elites and foreign powers use immigration as a weapon. You might immediately say to yourself, well, you know, if the American government has any sense, if the Canadian government has any sense, they'll just take the citizenship away from these people. Except I will point you to the reality that anti-whites in the United States, in countries across the West, they have millions upon millions of anti-whites internally undermining everything we try to do for the country. So there will be judges, as there are judges now. There will be politicians, whole political parties, and there'll be alliances and all of this to undermine any legitimate de-enfranchisement of what clearly is a coup by China trying to sneak in the back door. As Schweitzer is pointing out here, of course, we understand that places like China, all these countries around the world are financing anti-whiteism in the West because the worst thing for competitors or to Western civilization is a proud, unified white race identifying on our birth a people with many countries and many more ethnicities. That is the most terrifying thing to the world, that I can promise you. In his explosive new book, Schweitzer details how Chinese elites have exploited America's birthright citizenship policies by engaging in a practice known as birth tourism. This is something that's been talked about for a long, long time. And if we had a people, ladies and gentlemen, if the white race were a people, we would object to this immediately. Our politicians would immediately, from all of our parties, would say, no, of course not. That's not going to be permitted. We're not going to allow these people to come into the United States or come into any of our countries and to be able to get citizenship and to vote in our laws and have this weird dual citizenship where they're actually loyal to some foreign country. No, thank you. Birthright citizenship policies. Birth tourism, whereby Chinese mothers intentionally travel to the United States and give birth on American soil so that their newborn children will automatically be granted U.S. citizenship. As I just said, it's extremely dangerous for the West because of the anti-whites that we have internally. Very easy on its surface to say we should just cancel their citizenships. They shouldn't be allowed to vote in our elections. Of course, they shouldn't be allowed. But the anti-whites will object because the anti-whites in the West want anti-white outcomes. Folks, we're really running out of time. The clock is ticking. The second hand is moving faster than ever. We are running out of time to recapture our destiny. It is not going to be by some conservative individual in power who is dictating this or that, for now causing a lot of waves, for now achieving some gains for the founding stock of all Western countries, founding every second of our existence, Westmen, Western kind, white men and women. One of birth tourism's biggest appeals is the chain migration that it triggers, which we have heard in our entire lives from anti-whites. Never happens, except as soon as we dig in, as soon as we look, we see that it is exactly what obviously is happening all along. It is, well, their family has to be brought in, and then, well, the wife has to bring in her brother because he's a little handicapped, and the father has to bring in his parents because they can no longer take care of themselves in their country. It just goes on and on and on. And there are so many different paths to citizenship across Western civilization, that it's seemingly limitless. They can keep coming in and requesting. They can come in on a visa. They can come in on a student visa. They can keep requesting changes in status the entire time they're here. And what do you think anti-white politicians, you might immediately think of somebody like Ilhan Omar. Sure, her office is going to be handing out citizenship, but it's not just her office. It is anti-whites across the board, even anti-whites in the Republican Party. When such children turn 21, they can also apply for resident status for both of their parents. Oh, did I just say that? Schweitzer explains. Meanwhile, the anti-white bitches at YouTube, they had their finger on the delete this video button until they found out, oh, geez, this Schweitzer guy said it too. So we can't just say Jason made it up, and so we'll take the video away. To demonstrate the extent of the practice, he uses the U.S. territory of Saipan in the Pacific as an example, writing that more than 70% of the newborns in Saipan are PRC birth tourist parents who utilize the territory's 45-day visa-free visitation rules and the covenant of the Northern Mariana Island to guarantee that their children will have American citizenship. So you have, talk about bizarre, and nobody is talking about this until Schweitzer writes this up in the book. Nobody's even talking about this, and suddenly it would be upon Westman across. And what are all the cucks going to do then? They're going to say, it's not fair. They've been sneaking in for generations, and now they can sway elections. Now they can sway the election for the president of the United States. Who will be the president of the United States? What do you think communist Chinese citizens of the United States, of Canada, etc., who do you think they're going to vote for? The most patriotic? Who do you think they're going to vote for? Do you think they're going to vote for the more anti-white politician, for more anti-white outcomes to pull down the West so that China can reign supreme? The red worm on planet Earth can reign supreme? No, thank you. He writes on here, because the U.S. federal government does not directly track birth tourism, no one knows the true extent of the practice. Schweitzer, I have seen all the way back in 2000 some estimates, and it's like the Republican Party not interested. Now, for as much as they love Republican politicians to combat the faux foe, the fake foe, the ghost of a foe of communism, for as much as they love to combat that, because nothing punches back at them and they can act tough. They can go out to their sewing circles in the conservative circles in general, and they can go out and they can say, look, I'm fighting the ghost of communism, and don't you want to vote for me again? For as much as they love doing that, why are they saying nothing about this? This is going to determine presidential elections. This is going to determine elections across the West, where China has inserted its population. Chinese officials estimate the number is a staggering 50,000 of their own citizens per year. So if China is telling you 50,000 per year, what do you think the actual number is? This is warfare. This is demographic warfare. The white people of the world can't influence who will lead China, who will lead Iran, no. But they can influence in the West because we are not a people. And since we are not a people, anti-whiteism is allowed to be virulent and grow rapidly and maintain the moral high ground and sustain the anti-white immoral imperative as the morality of the West. Nothing will remedy that. No amount of deportations, no amount of Trump saying something badass, no amount of ICE agents heading into a little taco eatery and being served, and as badass as it is, being served by the people there and then arresting them all and deporting them. As badass and funny as that is, that won't stop the undermining of the United States and indeed of the totality of the West. So they estimate that 50,000 per year. It's probably 10 times. Scholars who have studied the subject in depth, like the Australian-based professor Salvatore Babonas, put the figures even higher, perhaps twice that, more than that. Come on. With up to 100,000 Chinese babies born in U.S. citizens every year. He writes, birth tourism may result in millions of new elite Chinese Americans. I wonder how they'll treat the American employees and the Canadian employees. And by here, I mean the people who are America in their biospirit, who are Canada in their biospirit. Some researchers place the number higher still. Geez, maybe I should have read this before we looked at it. Media Research, a Chinese data analyst company, says that in 2018 alone, 150,000 people came from China to the United States to practice birth tourism. This is insane. While Trump administration is preoccupied with finding every Central and South American they can find across the United States, the Chinese are legally filling the voter rolls. They won't need to, the Democrats won't need to lie on the voter rolls anymore. And we find, of course, every time we turn around, it's 50,000 more, 150,000 more, 350,000 more, completely fraudulent. Every time, my opinion, of course, check it out for yourself. You know what happens? They're stealing your vote. They steal your real vote. You know, for decades, the Democrats have been talking about how the white race, by way of the euphemism or the dysphemism of the Republicans, have been stealing the vote of blacks, of the poor blacks and the poor Hispanics by making the poll stations close at a normal hour and not allowing them to go collect ballots, harvest them from neighborhoods and all that. We used to be that way, right? You were just stealing their votes by not allowing them to come in and vote without ID, because you can't expect them to have identification like you have to have identification. Right? You were stealing their votes all along, and you capitulated. You said, okay, yeah, give them more time. Let them vote without ID. Let them on and on and on. You capitulated the entire time. The reality was your vote was stolen, because when people who are not citizens or who shouldn't be citizens are voting, your vote is canceled. So that means your contract with the state is canceled, but you still obey the laws. You still obey the laws in this lawless land where villains get to do whatever they want. If they got enough money or they have the right anti-white ideology, they can do whatever they want. But you're still obeying by the laws. You're still paying their taxes, because your ass will go to jail forever. But your side of the contract upheld, while their side, the state side of the contract, is void. They're voided through votes that cancel your vote. They're voided through the interpretation of the laws by way of the anti-white immoral imperative, on and on. And meanwhile, while that's happening, and none of your taboo grifters are talking about this, are they? Because it's not a hot button issue yet. They're like this. And as soon as China becomes a hot button subject that will get attention to them, make them money, get them aggrandized, then all the taboo grifters will be talking about it. Not until then. But they'll just keep flip-flopping. They'll just keep flip-flopping until it does show up. According to Schweitzer, the practice Chinese birth tourism state has flourished in the past 15 years, been longer than 15 years, with at least 750,000 and possibly as many as 1.5 million Chinese who are also American citizens by virtue of being born here, now growing toward adulthood in China. By the way, while you're thinking about, well, you mean they've come into an American territory, or they come into one of the lower 48 or Alaska or Hawaii or wherever it is, they get citizenship, and then they go back to China, and then they're allowed to vote in our elections. They get to mail in their little ballots. They get to mail in. How many states are each of them registered in order to vote? Probably every Democrat state, every blue state, probably, right? Not only that, they're getting benefits. They're getting benefits. They're paying nothing into our system. Go ahead, check it out for yourself. Maybe it's my opinion. Check it out for, maybe I just understand it wrong, but check it out for yourself. Do you remember Doge? You remember this little thing called Doge, and they were finding this kind of shit all over the place? Millions and millions, and who knows, just to China alone, how many of our dollars are making their way over to these American citizens in China. And guess what? China's not the only country that's doing it. It's just the biggest competitor on the world stage with the United States and the white man's dying hegemony, or the echo of the hegemony that's left over. They're just the biggest competitor. There are other countries doing this too. Now, do we have your attention yet? Chinese is a unique challenge to the United States because, quote, perhaps more than a million or millions of Chinese nationals have become citizens by virtue of being here. They are often children of elites who have prospered in the communist Chinese system. So how do you like that? So they're rich and they're elite. They're elite over in China, and they're getting benefits. They have been suitably indoctrinated in CCP-controlled schools and taught about U.S. values, culture, or history from a distorted CCP perspective. Technically, as American citizens, they are eligible to vote in elections and can relocate to the United States at any time when they turn 21, can sponsor their parents to come as well. Their siblings, they can sponsor them. Their children, of course, get to come with them as permanent residents. Based on what little data we have about Chinese to U.S. birth tourism, this tidal wave could hit American society. You know what I want to, this tidal wave could hit American society as soon as 2030. What do we talk about 2030? This tidal wave just from China alone. And again, they're voting. They can vote. They have them ballots. No problem. They're going to be voting wherever they are because they're American citizens. So what have we talked about 2030 and what that means for the white race, Western kind? We're not going to be able to take away their citizenship and all of their rights and everything by the normal means, my friends, by the normal means, because the anti-whites are going to undermine it every step of the way. You have no idea how close we are. No idea. But keep fighting the cuck battle, or keep, something that is important though. One group of taboo grifters who won't be complaining about China? The ones paid by China, directly or indirectly. We talked about, and it's in this community, in the white positive sphere, robustly known that all of the internet is fake, except for that which you can take away and use in your real life as useful, right? Everything else is fake. Everything else has agents and these shadowy figures who are paying and funding and connecting and making there be more views. So there's a bandwagon effect, this psychological warfare tactic, on and on and on and on. So there'll be a collection of taboo grifters who will never talk about China or who will downplay China. I can think of a couple right now who I'm pretty confident are getting money from the Chinese, either directly or indirectly. And there'll be no criticism of China as a consequence. The problem of birth tourism emerged as a large-scale practice during the Obama administration. Schweitzer explains that the Obama administration encouraged this practice, which soon grew on an industrial scale. So I wonder why Obama, this anti-white POS, would encourage birthright citizenship. What do you think the reason is? Do you think he's a commie? If you do, find a roof. He's anti-white. America is a white country yet. And he wants to put an end to that. So birthright citizenship, of course he encouraged that. And especially in China, birth tourism is highly organized, supported by the Chinese Communist Party. So it's been made into a business by the Communist Chinese, according to Schweitzer. and perhaps represent a covert method of injecting millions of citizens into America. Many of the parents involved are pillars of the Chinese elite in the CCP. Members, senior officials of intelligence agencies, and government ministers. The practice targets a vulnerability in U.S. immigration law, suggesting that China's malicious intent is civilizational warfare through subversive immigration. You know, all the way back, even before 2000, when I was working on the Hill, there were a lot of writers who were talking about how the Chinese always play like a feminine, this feminine nature that the Chinese people have, a long generational method of warfare. This is it. I bet you they were just spouting off. I bet you they were shooting loads when they figured this out generations ago. This absolutely appeals to what appears to be, in my opinion, a female or feminine nature of the Chinese people, or at least the Chinese Communist Party, or most of the Chinese Communist Party in general. Not everybody, of course, but it does appear that way when you take a long view of history, at least when I'm reading history. Another form of the U.S. birthright citizenship that has been used by Chinese nationals is the widespread use of surrogate mothers in the United States to carry children of the senior CCP officials. We've heard about this from time to time, using surrogates, white women in America. These officials then collect the children at birth and raise them back in China. One such senior Chinese Communist Party official is Xiao, who Schweitzer says has produced more than 100 million in California, purchased 100 million in California real estate, and has an interest in, quote, producing children via surrogacy with women across the United States, close quote. This just gets worse and worse and worse. Xiao is just the tip of the iceberg of children with Chinese parents being produced via surrogacy with American women, and thereby U.S. citizens who will join the legions of others born here via birth tourism. And of course, some of these surrogate women as well are Chinese Americans. Records of California indicate there are 107 companies with the word surrogacy in the name in the state alone. In California alone, all 107, more than 107, owned by Chinese. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And a thought occurred to me last night as I was showering, and with regard to Greenland and the Chinese. I saw this headline. I hadn't read this. We read it together. And I was showering, and then suddenly an epiphanic moment, not even really thinking about this. And the light bulb went out. I wasn't electrocuted being in the shower, even though the light bulb went off. And it suddenly hit me. The United States needs Greenland, yes, for numerous reasons. And two of the big ones, of course, are controlling the northern part of the globe so that the newer weapons produced by Russia and China aren't able to exploit that shortcut to the United States. The United States has to be there, national security, but it's bigger than that, my friends. They need Greenland. As I say, this hit me in the shower, to forestall the militaristic takeover by the United States of Canada. Oh, yeah. Canada is long down the road of subjugation by communist China. Same tactics. China pouring in there, the Chinese people, communist Chinese, pouring into Canada, their votes deciding elections, their money deciding what politicians have the war chest to run for office. And therefore, Canada is a target of China in order to undermine the United States. So the only way to forestall the military invasion of Canada by the United States is to encircle Canada. Encircle Canada with the weapons of the United States, and then China would realize maybe this is not going to work. Maybe we can't use Canada against the United States. Eventually, though, as long as China exists and persists, Canada eventually is going to have to fall to the United States. There's no way that the anti-whiteism in Canada is at its runaway pace with as many Chinese and Chinese dollars that are in Canada. There's no way at this point, at least with the tools available at the moment, maybe that will change in the future. You know how human ingenuity, especially the ingenuity of the white man, is. But nonetheless, it's gotten to a point now where as long as China and Russia, for that matter, persist at their power level and with this posture toward the United States, Canada is a threat in its current state to the United States. It can't be permitted.